Bruce Kendall runs the Economic Development Board in Tacoma and Pierce County. Bruce, welcome. Roger Weed runs the Department of Commerce. Bob Drill runs the Puget Sound Regional Council. Ken Zentz runs CERTI, and we all know Jeremy really well. I'm going to come join you guys, and just a reminder to folks to tweet your questions up here on the screen, and we'll get to them as they go. Rogers, I'm going to throw the first question to you. We're just going to have a conversation, and fair warning, I might cut you off. We only have 30 minutes. That's not just to you, Rogers, that's to everybody, including Bob. And the state yesterday morning, right, was broke. And then at noon, it lost $700 million over the next 2 years. And so I think the question is, for a lot of us up here on stage who do a lot of the work we do, at least in part with government money, how do we look beyond this era of having any money whatsoever and get to a model where we can be partnering and doing some of the things that we should be doing that we aren't? Rogers.
Great. Well, I think this is on. Is it on now?
Yeah.
Great. Well, I think if there's not many silver linings in a economic recession like we've been in, but if there's one biggest one I would highlight, it's that it puts pressure on the silos that we all get into. And when things are going up by 2, 3, 5, 10% every year, it's easy to just focus on your own things and just keep going and keep growing and keep doing new things and not really pay much attention to what's going on alongside you. But when the tide starts running out, when resources start contracting, you're really forced to look to either side of you and say, who can I partner with? How can I bring my chips, if you will, in together with somebody else's and make something greater out of our combined set of resources than we could do individually? And I've really seen that going on for the last couple of years. Whoops, turn off all the cell phones. And I think we need to keep doing more of it. Whether I've certainly experienced it, whether it's the Aerospace Council or the Clean Energy Leadership Council, or the work we've been doing with WBBA and WTIA on export promotion and other initiatives. Our work with the local folks around the state. All these things have to get more tightly synced when you have less resources, and that's a good thing because I think most of us would agree that some of the most powerful innovation comes at the boundaries of things. If you think about the intersection of software and aerospace, or I'm a software guy, so I'll say software and life sciences, or software and energy, that's where some of the most exciting things happen, but the entities have to connect, they have to be motivated to work together, and I think this fiscal crisis puts that kind of pressure on us.
First, your perspective. You run public-private partnership, you're chairing the state board on this. What are some of the specifics you guys are looking at and how we partner on some of this stuff?
Well, I think Roger sort of laid out sort of the big challenge that we've got in front of us. And so the Economic Development Commission for the state of Washington, a number of commissioners are here right now, has been up and running in its new form for about 2 years now. And we are trying to, I think what Steve Ballmer might say happened at Microsoft in the tech world, we're trying to urge, and Roger's has been a big part of this too at the state of Washington, is a reset in how we look at how economic development is going to get done in the state of Washington. It's going to have to be different in the future than it's been in the past. This notion that you can go to the state as the source of first resort or maybe last resort for funding for projects or whatever it might be, those days are behind us, and the feds are in about the same position. You're going to hear more about that later today. So at the commission level, we're focused on some broad things around talent, infrastructure, and investment. And what I was thinking about coming in today was, if the state doesn't have any money or has little money to spend that is new, how do we, and this is something the Commission's looking at, how do we look at the approximately $3 billion that the state spends right now on programs that can be defined and are defined by many as economic development programs? Are we using those resources in the best possible way to get the best possible results? The other thing we're looking at, and
what's the answer to that?
What the answer to?
Are we?
We're not.
Yeah.
We're not.
So
Oh, absolutely,
what do we do?
absolutely not. 141 programs, $3 billion. I think there's probably a more efficient way we know there is to tackle that. There are some things that we can do that don't cost a thing right now, and I'll give 2 examples. And the Commission has talked a lot about this, and many of you in this room have worked on this as well. Tax increment financing. We're one of the few states, if not the only one left, that doesn't have real tax increment financing. There's a bill moving through the legislature right now that may well make it through, and it'll require constitutional amendments. There will be a campaign around that, etc. But we have to think tools like that in the toolbox. It don't cost the state an additional dollar at all, but can provide a new stream of revenue based on future tax revenues to the infrastructure around projects that might need to get built in technology fields and other fields. So there are opportunities out there that don't cost money that we need to keep our eye on and continue to push forward.
So Kim, your organization is subject to some of that efficiency talk, right? We had Chris up from the Washington Technology Center earlier. Can you talk a little bit about what's happening with CERTI and the WTC and where we see things going there?
Absolutely. In fact, a little over 18 months ago, many of us in this room and on this panel identified that it's not just about focusing on how little resources the state has, it's about focusing on how do we leverage the resources that we do have. So toward that end, an effort called the Statewide Innovation Ecosystem Task Force was formed, and Commerce led that together with PNNL. It included WSU and the University of Washington from their tech transfer offices, and of course CERTI and WTC, and the Economic Development Commission. During those discussions, we really focused on how can we get the most performance out of every dollar? How can we focus more on outcomes? And so to make a long story short, one of those outcomes that we decided was implementable was to bring the talents and the leverage of the strengths that both CERTI and WTC have had together to merge the two organizations and instantly create a statewide effort that will, if the legislation passes, will be called Innovate Washington. That state agency then would be the place where the state can invest whatever monies it's ready to invest in the innovation ecosystem, but our performance and execution would be done through a public-private partnership. Again, the focus is on the outcomes. What outcome can we get? So there would be 3 lines of business to this effort. One would be traditional and innovative entrepreneurial support of the type that WTC and CERTI have demonstrated very well on both sides of the state. And we would grow that into the other economic clusters in the state. The next line of business would be focused on leveraging the state's dollars, both with federal and private dollars. The third line of business would be targeted and specific sector support. The first sector that's ready to be focused upon is the clean energy sector, stemming from the work that the Clean Energy Leadership Council did during the last 2 years, and implementing those recommendations. So the effort for the organization of the sector would be driven by sector participants, much more so than it would be driven by the state. So the sector participants who would form the board would identify the priorities on an annual basis or every 2-year basis to make sure that we have a constant dialogue and a clear place of engagement for the private sector to come together with the state so that we're getting the most performance out of everyone's dollars. And an additional idea here is let's connect the dots, let's pull everything together with that leverage so that we can think bigger as a state, bigger and broader. All of the economic sectors have an opportunity to be connected together so that we might be able to compete more effectively for the larger chunks of federal and private dollars and achieve more together.
Speaking of federal dollars, and Bob, I was very impressed looking at the tweets here, how excited Prosperity Partnership is to hear what you have to say. So I don't know if you know those guys or not.
Please, my family.
Talk about federal money. I know there's a lot of new federal investment focused on regional economic development. What are you guys hearing about the opportunities for regions, that kind of thing? In our constrained environment, perhaps that's an opportunity to get a little bit more money to the party. What do you guys know about that?
Well, I think what we need to do, Bill, is to take everything that my 3 colleagues here have chatted about. Is we know what we're doing here. We have some sense of investment opportunity, but I would add a 4th new strategy to the 3 new suggestions on the masthead earlier, and that's this new model business. The federal government is taking a different perspective on how they fund economic development. And what we're seeing is federal agencies partnering up for the first time, at least since I've been involved in this type of work, in getting agencies together and compelling regions to submit such things as business plans. I know that's a foreign concept when people think about relationships with government, but that subset of that is the necessity for the private sector and government to get even closer in their relationships. And I think the greatest example I could give you would be ones of success. We have been awarded through HUD, the Transportation Department, Federal Transportation Department, and EDA about $5 million for a sustainability grant. And that probably sounds like a whole bunch of governmental hobnobbing to you, but what it really means is we have an opportunity to make good, solid investments in how we build things and how we get back and forth and the technology that we have here available to do it. Likewise, we are one of 3 regions, and this is a bragging session to some extent, but to get to the point, the dollars come to us because we came at them in a regional sense, because we had a private-public partnership to get there. And I think that's going to be the wave of the future. One of my stump lines is the federal government, and I guess I suspect it doesn't make any difference who is in power at the moment. I think they cannot continue and don't have any intention to continue funding every village, town, burg, county without some sense of a strategic overlay to the investment of those dollars. So you heard these 3 folks speak earlier about the plans that are in place here. And the state's, yeah, the state's in tough shape. I mean, that's probably not the brightest comment you'll hear this morning, but the important part of this is there are still dollars available. And I love the word leverage, because when we do the type of work that we're doing, and we can display and show the feds that there is a return on investment, I think we're going to have much more success. One of the things that Jeremy chatted about was, yes, it's a tough time, but at the end of this day, today, I'm convinced you'll walk away that we're in better shape to weather whatever is coming forward. And at this moment, that's a little bit speculative. But let me just capstone this. We need to plan, we need to partner, and we need to pursue. And we need to pursue outside funding and local investment and match that up in the most efficient fashion.
So Todd Smith here asks about getting more specific on efficiencies with money and innovation investment. Jeremy, maybe I'll look at you as sort of an informed, observer of this government economic development function over the years. I mean, from your perspective as a business leader, growing companies and employing smart people, where do you see some gaps where we could partner more together between public and private and that kind of thing? I'm sure there's other questions or other answers too from the panelists too, but let me see if Jeremy has initial thoughts on that.
Well, before I get to the partnership thing, I want to make sure that we don't forget about the fundamentals of what drives businesses in this state to be successful, and that's workforce to a large degree, especially for companies that are creating intellectual property, which is really what gives you the leverage to be a big exporter and to have a global business. I think the first responsibility of the state is to make sure that we take care of things like education and the health of our research institutions and infrastructure. So that I don't want to lose sight of that as kind of a foundation for everything. From there, I think it varies quite a bit. I mean, I remember when I was on a panel, I think with a technology event many years ago, and somebody said, "What can the state do to help you?" And I said, "Get the hell out of the way." Because for a software company that's building something in an office building, you really don't want too much help. You kind of want them to just be left alone. But one of my experiences over the past 2 years was with the Clean Energy Leadership Council, and I think the picture varies quite a bit when you start looking at the businesses that are engaged in trying to build a clean energy industry in this state. Then you're starting to deal with nascent technologies that are not ready for prime time, can't stand on their own 2 feet yet. A combination of grants, government as a customer, actually being the first customer for something can be very helpful, both because it gets money in the door and because it creates some credibility around product and some experience for the company that's developing that product is really important. Anything that has something to do with regulation, reducing the regulatory burden, I think is really an important aspect of allowing those companies to get going, especially when they're small and don't have the capacity to really deal with a lot of different agencies agencies, et cetera. So those are the things that come to mind for me.